I don't want no oil spoiling my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes!
Good morning, Toledo, and good afternoon, Columbus, and hello to everyone on the internet, wherever and whenever you may be. My name is Joe DeMare, and I am here with my extremely intelligent co-host,
Rebecca Wood.
Rebecca Wood, yes, and together, Rebecca.
Time for me to wake up and remember my name.
Yes, well, you know, often extremely intelligent people forget simple things.
I'm an absent-minded intellectual.
There you
Sounds
are.
a lot better than airhead.
Right, own it. Own
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So anyway, what we're about to do is give you an unbelievable hour of radio called For a Green Future. And For a Green Future is a show where we talk about ecology and the environment. And we talk about it in ways that affect you, your wealth, your health, your happiness, the wealth and health and happiness of your friends and families and co-workers and the birds that are migrating and the insects that they're chasing after down south, and pretty much everybody and everything, because like it or not, we're all wrapped up together on this wonderful planet called Earth. And we have a wonderful show for you today on September 8th, 2024, as we usually do. We're just going to chat for the next 10 minutes or so about some eco-observations I've made during the week. And then we're going off to interview Mark Z. Jacobson, a professor extraordinaire at Stanford University. He's an engineering professor. We've had him on before talking about just how practical it is to switch to 100% wind, water, and solar, despite what all the internet trolls say. Then we are hearing from our fantastic advertisers and patrons, people that we really, really appreciate. And then Rebecca, what will you be talking about in your segment this week?
In honor of National Salami Day, which is today.
Wow, okay.
Or I'm sure it's perfectly acceptable for you to celebrate late in Columbus. I will be talking about pigs.
Pigs, okay, right. And I just completely forgot to decorate this year.
Yeah,
for
me too.
National Salami Day, oh well. And then after that, it's ecological news, and we have news from all over the world, some good, some bad. We're going to end on a nice, positive, feel-good story this week, so stick around for that. Okay, so just interestingly, on the way in this morning, Rebecca and I were on Fearing Road there, and there was a train on the bridge, and it was a coal train. It was just filled with coal cars.
It was just sitting there, too.
Just sitting there.
On those bridges, which you hear dark rumors about chunks falling out.
Yeah.
Of the bottom, because they were repairing some of them, so.
And coal is kind of heavy, too. Yeah, whenever I go under a bridge with a stopped train, I always kind of hold my breath there. But, you know, it's just a reminder, you know, this coal train, it literally extended off in either direction as far as we could see. And it's just a reminder that, you know, we're not there yet. And we still have some coal plants running that have to be shut down. And even though, you know, when we woke up this morning, it was quite cold. It was 41 degrees down there at Bowling Green when I got up. But it's climate, just because we have a cold morning doesn't mean that global warming isn't real. Just that weekly reminder. In fact, it was kind of interesting. I had to buy some new shoes this week, and I was there in the shoe store, and this woman came in all excited because she had just moved up here from Florida. And she said, you know, just it's the difference in running, because this was a running shoe store, that the heat down in Florida makes running so terrible, and she's been running up here since she moved here about a week ago, and she said it's like heaven here. So, yeah.
You can go outside without it being life-threatening in the fall.
Exactly.
Yay.
And so just a reminder, they're coming. You know, people are starting to flee the South, and I'm seeing it more and more anecdotally. But again, that coal reminds us that unless we stop putting more CO2 in the air, this is just like a temporary, our little slice of heaven here is just sort of temporarily going to be one of the best places in North America to live, but it's temporary.
Also,
Eventually,
I'm guessing that if too many people move here because it's scheduled to not be underwater or on fire, according to most people's estimates,
right, yeah.
I will not be able to afford it anymore and will have to move to Geary.
That's a good point, yeah. I mean, it's true. Gentrification happens, and
Yeah.
climate is one of the things that produces, you know, people moved down to the South in big flocks because they wanted to avoid winter. Well, now that winter's gone, they're probably going to flock back up here again.
We need somebody that will scare the out-of-staters more until you go.
Yeah, but while we are here, and while it's still affordable for us, for you and me, the regular listener, one of the nice things about this area is we have a lot of cool festivals, and my excuse for not being 100% like super energetic today was I was up till about 2 last night because I volunteered at the Black Swamp Arts Festival, and I volunteer with a whole bunch of environmental groups from Bowling Green State University, like the Environmental Action Group. Now they have something called the Environmental Service Club, and so we were tasked with cleaning up after the bands had left, and we had to go around and try to get the place looking as nice as it was before the whole event started. And I am just amazed. I was just super impressed again at the dedication these kids, these students at BGSU have. I mean, one of our tasks was to collect the recyclables, the bottles, and this year we can recycle the little plastic cups, the number 2 plastic cups that they serve the beer in. And these kids who were there all day, a lot of them, were literally pulling the recyclables out of the trash. They were diving into the trash cans to pull out these cups and bottles and things, and tin and aluminum cans. And it's just a reminder to me just how deep the desire is to do something about all this terrible environmental destruction we have. And I think that's a healthy thing, to want to actually just physically get out and do something. And we did prevent probably an entire dumpster's worth of trash from just going to the dump. Now, we still filled 2 other entire huge dumpster rollaways with the trash that couldn't be recycled. So, and ultimately doing things like this doesn't change the policies that are creating the problems, if you know what I mean. I mean, it's great we're recycling the bottles and the cans from this event, and as I said, these kids did an amazing job, but that won't change things if we don't change the policies. It's one thing to recycle all the disposable plastic from an event, but as long as we keep having single-use plastics, there's going to be millions of tons that go to the dumps, get out into the environment, get into the oceans. And so doing these events and doing these tasks like this is commendable, and it's good for your mental health, and it does help things, it does improve things marginally, but what really needs to happen is the fundamental changes that a lot of countries and a lot of cities and a lot of places are making. But Ohio is actually passing laws against banning single-use plastics. The state government is preventing the local governments from banning single-use plastics.
The other thing is, I'm guessing that if you'd not volunteered to clean up after well, okay, you did get the recyclables, you did a good job but okay, it, I'm guessing that their motive for having you come in and do that was more that they didn't want to pay someone, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it is true that the Black Swamp Arts Festival is one of the unique things about it is it's 100% volunteer. Yeah, it has no professional staff at all, and every year it's just the people of Bowling Green all get together and do it. So, but yeah, yeah, I think they might give the student groups a little like an honorarium, like $100 or something donation
Right.
to their student group but it works out to like 25 cents an hour per
Okay.
per student, and so that's obviously not why they're doing it, but yeah, so they get these motivated students, and you're right, it does mean they don't have to hire people to come and do it. They got people like me and, and those kids that are willing to. But I just wanted to touch back again. There is a little bit of news from Athens County that the city of Athens has attempted to put in a single-use plastic ban, and they were sued by the state because the state said, no, we've got this law that says you can't. And they had written their ordinance to try to get around that, but the Ohio State Court just agreed with the state of Ohio that they're not allowed to ban single-use plastics. So it's just another example of just how backwards we are. I mean, you go to almost any major city in the world now, like New York City, it's got a single-use plastics ban. And I was in Chennai, India. They just don't have single-use plastics, and it's perfectly reasonable. It's perfectly easy to live without single-use plastics. But as long as we have backwards people in our legislature insisting, no, we must continue to use single-use plastics, this is going to continue to be a problem. So congrats to the students who came out and worked so hard last night and did all that recycling, but boo to the legislators in Columbus that are forcing us to have single-use plastics. So anyway, speaking of the idea of policy changes, things that will eliminate those trainloads of coal that we have to deal with these days, there's a push by many people in many countries to take us to 100% wind, water, and solar. And there have been thousands of studies, actually, by many academics who basically just look at the numbers dispassionately, the way college professors are supposed to, and just the amount of renewable energy that's there for us to tap into is incredible. I mean, on 1 square foot of ground, on average, you get a 1 horsepower of power like every hour the sun is out. There's just immense amounts of wind and solar energy that are out there. And so whenever somebody seriously runs the numbers, it turns out we can supply all our energy needs with 100% wind, water, and solar. And one of the people who've run those numbers is Professor Mark Jacobson. And he was very generous to come on our show again. This is about a guy, he's been on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. He's gotten some big national interviews, so we're really grateful that he's a friend of this show and willing to come on and talk to us about it. So let's go right to that interview with Mark Jacobson. Hello and welcome back to For a Green Future. Could you just please share your name and who you're with?
Yeah, Mark Jacobson, a professor of civil and environmental engineering at Stanford University.
Right. And we've had you on before. Basically, you've published books and papers demonstrating that the world can move to carbon-free by going 100% wind, water, and solar, right?
Yeah. We believe the world can transition all its energy to just clean renewable sources, wind, solar, geothermal, hydroelectric, maybe some tidal wave power, and at low cost, and thereby eliminating energy-related emissions that affect global warming, air pollution, and energy insecurity.
Right. And what could you just remind us the title of your last two books there?
Well, last book was No Miracles Needed, and it's basically how we can solve the climate, air pollution, and energy security problems we face with existing technologies, and we don't need miracle technologies. And then the other previous one was 100% clean renewable energy and storage for everything, which is more of a textbook or more technical book on how to do the same thing, transition the world to clean renewable energy.
All right. And the reason I wanted to interview right now is because you just did a study that a lot of the people who oppose renewables, who oppose transitioning to carbon-free, claim that basically that it's impossible, that it cannot happen. But you recently did a study that shows that a whole bunch of countries and states actually are already there or almost there.
Yeah, in fact, there are 10 countries in the world that are 99.5 to 100% renewable electricity generation in the annual average. They include Albania, Bhutan, Lesotho, South Georgia and South Sandwich Islands, Nepal, Iceland, Ethiopia, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Costa Rica, and Paraguay. They all generate 99.5 to 100% of the electricity that they use or generate from just wind, hydro, geothermal, and solar. And there are in fact, there are 64 countries that are 50 to 100% renewables. And so in fact, it's about 15% of the population of the world is in these countries that are between 50 and 100% renewables. Worldwide, the average clean renewable penetration is about 27%. But the biggest countries of the world are all below 30%. Their generation is from clean renewable energy. And I should keep in mind that electricity is only 20% of all end use energy. So here we're just talking about electricity, not transportation, buildings, or industry, which also we want to transition to electricity. But when we do transition those other sectors to electricity, energy requirements will drop significantly. So we'll probably need twice as much electricity as today, but we reduce power demand by about 60%, and close to 60%, but we'll double electricity use. But the good news is the electricity sectors are already transitioning in many countries of the world.
Right. So while the electricity use drops, the other energy sources like gasoline, oil, natural gas just go away completely. So
Yeah,
when we
correct.
switch to a carbon-free, so even though
Right.
electricity doubles net, there's a whole lot less energy and less pollution.
Yeah, like when we transition transportation, we'll get rid of gasoline, diesel, jet fuel, bunker fuel, and we'll replace them with electricity or hydrogen produced from electricity. And then the hydrogen is used to reproduce electricity in a fuel cell. And so that way we electrify all transportation. We eliminate all oil for transportation and we replace it with electricity. But it takes only 1/4 the energy and electricity to do the same job as oil products do for transportation. So in that case, in the case of transportation, we reduce the energy requirements, well, in the best case by 75%, but really in practice, it'd be, maybe 50 to 75%.
Mhm. And so these countries that have done it, basically, while we're sort of arguing if it's possible, a lot of these countries have just gone ahead and done it. How did they do it?
Well, most of them are dominated by hydropower. In fact, all the top 10 are dominated by hydropower. But I should point out that, there's a small country, Tokelau, that has, all these numbers are from 2022, so things have actually improved since then. But Tokelau gets 93.8% of the electricity it produces from just solar and wind. It's almost all solar. It's 91.6% solar and 2.2% wind. So almost 94% wind and solar alone in this island nation of Tokelau. But and also Namibia has a lot of solar, which, and Namibia is ranked number 11. It supplies 98.6% of all the electricity it generates from just wind, water, solar, but most of it is hydropower. It's 59% hydropower, 2% wind, and 38% solar. But like Bhutan is 100% hydropower. Lesotho is 99.9% hydropower. Nepal is 99% hydropower. Iceland's about 71% hydropower and 29% geothermal. And Ethiopia is 97% hydropower, 3% wind, 0.2% solar. So they're mostly dominated by hydro, but there's some countries that are dominated by wind, like Denmark. Luxembourg is actually dominated, which is 55% wind, water, solar. It's got 26% wind, 23% solar, and 5% hydropower. Lithuania, what I was thinking of, it was 36% wind, 8% solar, 11% hydropower, so a total of 55% wind, water, solar. So there are spots of really dominating, wind and solar dominating, especially if we go to US states. Because US states, I mean, there are actually 12 states that provide 50% or more of the electricity that they consume with just wind, water, solar. South Dakota is actually number one. They're producing, 95% of the electricity that South Dakota consumes is from just wind and solar. It's about 69% wind and hydropower in that case, 69% wind, 26% hydropower. Montana overall supplies 77% of the electricity it consumes from wind, water, solar. It's mostly hydro, 47% hydro, 28% wind, and tiny amounts of solar. Iowa is mostly wind, 73% wind, 1% hydropower, and 1% solar. But we have Washington State, Kansas, Oregon, New Mexico, Maine, Oklahoma, Wyoming, North Dakota, and California. There's 12 states, 7 are dominated by wind, California is dominated by solar, and the rest are dominated by hydropower. So we do see this mix occurring.
For a Green
And
Future
by
is
the
also
way,
brought to
of the
you by the
states-
Wood County
of
Park
those 12
District.
states,
The Wood County
10
Park
of those 12
District is a
states
natural
have-
resources
are the
conservation
states with the,
agency.
among
They
the 19
protect
states with
natural
the lowest
spaces,
electricity prices in the
maintain
US,
quality
and
green
7 of the
spaces,
states are
provide
among the 10
engaging
states with the lowest
programming,
electricity
and they
prices.
teach people to
So
love
what
and
we
respect
see
nature.
is
They
that
also restore
more
wildlife
renewables actually
habitats and lead
translates,
people on outdoor adventures.
to lower
Wood
electricity
County
prices.
Parks protects natural
Now,
spaces in
some
Wood
people
County
look
for
to
all to
California,
enjoy
which
from
has
8
up
a.m.
to
to 30
50%
minutes
of its
past
electricity from
sunset
renewables
every day
and
of the year.
second highest prices
There's
in
several
the
ways
US.
to get a hold of them
claim,
and find out what's
well,
happening.
that's-
One is to call
that,
them at
more renewables means higher prices.
419-353-1897.
No, the actual trend is if you look at all the data is that more renewables means
Another
lower
is to
prices, but
visit
the
their
reason we have
website,
high electricity prices in California are because California has the
www.wcparks.org.
third highest
The
gas
website
prices
again
in the United
is
States
www.wcparks.org.
the cost
They are
of
also available on
wildfires
all
caused
social
by
media,
transmission line sparks for the
Instagram,
last several
Facebook,
years.
Twitter, and many others.
There's passed
Just
on to
search
customers
for
the cost of
WC
undergrounding
Parks.
transmission
That's the
lines.
Wood County Park
It passed on
District,
to
and we're very
customers the
grateful
cost of
for
the
their
Aliso
support.
Canyon and San Bruno gas disasters. It passed on to customers the cost of retrofitting underground gas lines due to the San Bruno disaster and the cost of the Diablo Canyon nuclear reactor. So there are a lot of reasons California has high electricity prices.
Well, and also their record profits last year, right? Their $2.1 billion profits that they made, which it seems like, the Public Utility Commission of California there has never met a price increase they didn't like. I mean, it seems like they just give PG&E everything they ask for.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's true. And then they blame rooftop solar when it's all they're trying to distract from the real problems, which is these higher costs due to disasters gas disasters and wildfires that have been triggered by the utilities.
Right. So you kind of touched on the next thing I wanted to ask you real quick about is that there's a lot of disinformation. There's claims, like you've mentioned, that renewables cause higher prices when in fact they cause lower prices. And I know that you actually spend a fair bit of time debunking those bits of disinformation. Could you just share a couple of those myths that you bust fairly regularly?
Well, Yeah, this most recent is the claim that the high renewable success in California, because California has, for a period of from March 7th through June 30th, there were 116 days where during 98 of those days, California's supply of wind, water, solar electricity exceeded the demand on the grid for 98 days, for several hours a day, an average of almost 5 hours a day, and a maximum of 10 hours. And this is due to a growth of about 30% more solar output this year than last year, and that's partly due to about a 20% increase in the nameplate capacity of solar, about an 8% increase in the wind output this year, and a doubling of batteries on the grid. This was accompanied by 40% less gas on the grid in 2024 than 2023 during that same period. And so this tremendous growth of renewables and 100% days in California, people are saying, well, that's because of these high prices, all this growth of renewables. But as I just mentioned, if you look at all the states in the US with high fractions of electricity from renewables, the actual correlation is lower, the more renewables, the lower the cost. The only exceptions are California and Maine. And I explained the reason for California just now, so I don't want to go through that again. But renewables have basically prevented the prices of electricity from being even higher in California. So this is really clear, especially if you look at other states. But there are a lot of other myths that are associated with renewables, but also, maybe I'll just point out, policies that are pushing other technologies that are not renewable, such as carbon capture, direct air capture, blue hydrogen, electrofuels, small modular reactors, subsidizing existing large reactors, bioenergy. All the subsidies and efforts going into those technologies, from our research, those technologies are not useful for addressing climate, air pollution, or energy security going forward. So we should be just focusing on clean, renewable energy.
Mm-hmm. So we should be putting all our efforts there, and particularly the carbon capture. I think you debunk that one fairly frequently. The idea that you can pull CO2 out of the atmosphere and stick it in the ground somewhere, and that's going to solve the climate crisis. That's pretty much a fantasy.
Well, yeah, the problem is that it actually increases carbon capture, and direct air capture increase carbon dioxide. And it's very easy to show this. I mean, take direct air capture. There's a plant in Iceland that takes carbon out of the air, and it takes 5,000 to 6,000 kilowatt hours of electricity to take out 1 ton of carbon dioxide. So that translates into, for every kilowatt hour of electricity used to do this, you get 167 to 200 grams of carbon dioxide taken out of the air. Sounds great. But if you so let's say in the best case, you're using wind or solar. Well, in the case of Iceland, they're using geothermal electricity, clean electricity, to do this. Sounds great so far. But in Iceland, they don't have coal they don't produce any electricity from coal or gas, but they do produce heat for industry with coal. And if you took that same kilowatt hour of electricity from geothermal and used it to produce heat to replace coal in industry in Iceland, you would reduce 4 times the CO2 than you're taking out of the air by using that electricity for this direct air capture. If there were a coal plant in Iceland that you could use that kilowatt hour of electricity to replace the coal electricity, you would be reducing 7 to 8 times more CO2. So in other words, by using renewable electricity for an additional electricity demand that was not needed before, you're preventing that electricity from replacing a fossil fuel source of some kind. And that's increasing carbon dioxide, but it's also increasing the air pollution from that fossil fuel source and the mining of that fossil fuel. In the case of Iceland, they have to mine the coal in another country, another continent, because Iceland's an island, and then transport it across the ocean to get there. So we could be getting rid of that coal, but instead they're using geothermal electricity to pull a little bit of carbon out of the air. But it's an opportunity cost, and you can find this. It's no matter how you slice it, no matter what the application of carbon capture or direct air capture, it's always increasing CO2 and air pollution.
Well, that's about all we have time for. Well, thanks so much for coming on, Mark.
Okay, thank you.
All right, that was our interview. And that his last point, that carbon capture actually produces CO2 because you're using energy to pull CO2 out when you could just use that energy to do whatever it is the CO2 is being burned to create or do. That never really hit home with me before, but now, I've always known carbon capture and storage was like a scam, but now I know it's like a super scam. So anyway, we're grateful to Mark for that interview and hope you enjoyed it. Oh, and I forgot to mention that you guys can weigh in on this, any topic that we talk about or any other environmental topic. Call in at 877-909-1007. Okay, so now we hear from our advertisers and patrons.
For a Green Future is also brought to you by the Wood County Park District. The Wood County Park District is a natural resources conservation agency. They protect natural spaces, maintain quality green spaces, provide engaging programming, and they teach people to love and respect nature. They also restore wildlife habitats and lead people on outdoor adventures. Wood County Parks protects natural spaces in Wood County for all to enjoy from 8 a.m. to 30 minutes past sunset every day of the year. There are several ways to get a hold of them and find out what's happening. One is to call them at 419-353-1897. Another is to visit their website, www.wcparks.org. The website again is www.wcparks.org. They are also available on all social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and many others. Just search for WC Parks. That's the Wood County Park District, and we're very grateful for their support.
And we are also on this show promoting my book, Fiducification, which is a collection of fantastic short stories which I wrote, but don't take my word for it. One of them actually won a national short story contest, so they got to be good. And to get one copy of that, you could either go to our Patreon page, that's Patreon, search for a Green Future. Up pops our Patreon page, and you do choose to do a one-time donation of $10, and then I will send you the book. Of course, you can also, like the people who support our show, our wonderful patrons, our faithful patrons, you can also choose to become a monthly member or monthly donor for a Green Future. When the Patreon page comes up, you just pick a monthly membership level, and whatever membership level you pick, I will send you a copy of Fiducification as a thank you. So those are our patrons on patreon.com, and you can buy my book, Fiducification, that way. You can also go to my website, Joe DeMare, foragreenfuture.org, and send me a message through the website, and I will hook you up with my book. Okay, and now it's time to hook up with Rebecca and her pearls of wisdom, and we're going to be talking about, speaking of pearls before swine there, I guess, we're going to be talking about pigs.
Yes, we are. So for National Salami Day, which is today, I looked it up. What is sort of the hallmark of salami? Well, it's basically dry fermented pork with salt. Which,
yeah,
I don't know, fermented pork sounds scary, but it sure does taste good. Anyway, so so I thought I would do pigs, swine, hogs, whatever you want to call them. Domestic pigs are from the genus Sus, and they are an even-toed ungulate from the family Suidae. Even-toed ungulate also being archaeodactyl. Archaeodactyl.
Oh, wow. What a Scrabble word that would be.
I know, it certainly would be, yeah. I don't know, okay, Sus and Suidae, they all seem to sound like the traditional way to call a pig, which is Sui.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. So how do these Anglo-Saxon farmers find this out? That's a Latin word. Like, maybe it has something to do with how pigs came to Great Britain, maybe from
the main
France
European.
or something. Yeah, I'm guessing it has something to do with that.
Well, probably, okay, since we're guessing, I'm guessing the Romans probably brought them over because,
That makes sense.
speaking as a descendant of Roman, we do love our pork.
You like
so.
to take pigs everywhere, yes. Okay. So yeah, an undulate is going through a few terms here just to remind myself and or anyone who's just tuning in. Ungulates are a clade of mostly large hooved mammals. Not large hooved. They're large mammals which have hooves. Just to be clear, we're not picking on them for their foot size. And a clade is a group of organisms evolved from a common ancestor. In this case, the ancestor would be the common Eurasian wild boar and other species.
Mhm.
So, yeah. The wild boars are native to this kind of wild boar is native to Europe and Africa, and they live in complex social groups. So they're originally Eurasian, but they've been in Africa for a long time. We know this from I guess, because they're called native to Africa, so they've been there for a while.
Right.
is how that translates. And they are pretty much, pigs are everywhere at this point. Pigs are everywhere. They live in complex social groups and are considered to be some of the more intelligent animals. There are 1 billion currently alive, and they're among the making them among the most populous large mammals. And they are legendarily omnivorous and will kind of eat just about anything that is edible. They're often used for medical research because of their biological similarity to humans. And a special thing about them is their snout, which has a special pre-nasal bone and a disc of cartilage at the tip for digging.
Ah, okay.
So that's their special thing they were evolved to do,
That
dig.
little round pig nose is kind of a shovel.
Yeah, you always kind of wonder about that. But okay, so I looked up some environmental problems with pigs, and they mostly boil down to poop, feces, and waste, which pollute the air and water, carry pathogens and heavy metals. How are heavy metals getting into pig poop? Is this with the feed or what?
Yeah, it must be.
Yeah, I guess
Or the
so.
environment,
The
basically.
soil, something. And some have said pathogens tend to be antibiotic resistant, which is very bad. They get spread around mostly by spray, like they spray it back on the fields, and then, it floats around the neighbors, and also waste drift, which both have been shown to cause mucosal irritation, respiratory ailments, stress, high blood pressure, and decreased quality of life, which you will understand if you've ever been anywhere near downwind of a pig farm.
Yeah.
They really don't smell good. So yeah, especially if there's intensive pork production, which I think is where they just, get a bunch of pigs and just make factory farming.
Yeah,
basically.
put them in a warehouse, basically.
It's also referred to in intensive hog farming. Is also referred to concentrated animal feeding operations, or CAFOs.
CAFO. Yeah.
CAFO, yeah, and it actually generates smog and has contributed to toxic algal blooms in Brittany, France. Not to mention Ohio.
Lake Erie.
Yeah, exactly. Also, they cause soil acidification. So, just to try and be fair or something, I looked up the benefits. And it was a lot of weird agricultural industry propaganda about how, these incredibly exhaustive measures of doing this and this, we've decreased it by 7%. That seems to be their ecological benefits. It's not that bad. But they do fertilize the soil. I mean, the problem is it's in too large numbers, but if you just had the amount of pigs you needed to fertilize a field, the amount of fields you had, that might work.
Mhm.
They keep down weeds, control pests. It says relatively efficient conversion of feed to meat as compared to some other critters, I guess.
Yeah, it's close to 1-to-1, whereas cattle, it's about 10-to-1.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh. That's weird.
Pounds of feed versus pounds of pork versus pounds of beef. Yeah.
Wow.
It takes about 10 times as much to make beef, which
Wild.
is actually why I don't eat beef.
Makes sense,
Okay.
yeah. Also, the rooting can benefit the soil and help get seedlings started. According to Pig World, a site called Pig World, advocates for rotating pigs through fallow croplands and orchards, which I guess is where the planting the seedlings, digging up the soil, helps seedlings start, comes in. But it's important to maintain green cover to do this to prevent runoff, which takes about 6 months to a year. So you got your field, you cut down your corn in the fall, and then I guess, maybe by spring, you let some pigs run around the field for a while.
Yeah.
So this
Possibly.
is a good way to do it if you're going to do it. According to the Soil Association advocates for agroecology, which is application of knowledge of environmental principles and relationships to farming. So yeah, they not only does the having pigs root around, according to them, it mimics the action of wild boars, helps seedlings grow in forests or orchards, and makes for better tasting pigs and better tasting apples too. So
there
that's
you
good.
go.
And
All
according to the Iowa Farm Bureau, since the 90s, pork production is up 80% and emissions are down 25%. So they're making progress, they're making an effort anyway, but still not as really efficient as just eating crops straight out of the field.
Right. Yeah. Keep the things the pigs are being fed, and you cut out.
Because you're biologically
Cut out the
very
middleman.
similar to a
Cut
pig.
out the middle pig.
What was it? Okay, in some cannibal cultures where humans are eaten ceremonially or occasionally or whatever.
Yes.
Use the word long pig to describe humans. Apparently it tastes like them too.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's what sailors called it when they had to eat each other. So
Oh my.
long pork. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, now that we're
that was a
somehow we
cheerful thought.
strayed from into cannibalism, but it's time for let's switch to ecological
They're very
news.
biologically similar to humans.
Yeah, let's run as fast as we can to ecological news.
Okay.
All right. So the first story comes to us, interestingly enough, from a press release. Somehow I've gotten on some kind of journalistic list, and people are sending me press releases. And this one came from Lahti, Finland, which calls itself the leading environmental city in Finland.
Yay.
They did a press release on September 2nd. They are running an interesting experiment. They're switching their street lights over to a street light that filters out the blue part of the spectrum, because apparently that's the part of the spectrum that is attracting the pollinators and leading them to, instead of pollinating or procreating, just sort of fly around streetlights until they get eaten by bats or something. They think that that this is a significant part of the insect apocalypse is human artificial lighting.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And they've supported that with there's been a study that shows that flowers that are in areas that are artificially lit have 62% fewer visits by pollinators, because the pollinators get detoured off into the streetlights. And so by filtering out the blue, they think that they can significantly reduce the impact on moths and other pollinators, moths and wasps and other things that pollinate at night. This is a small experiment. They're only doing 12 lights on about a 1,500 foot path that they have there. But they're complementing that with what they call the Night of the Pollinators, which on September 7th, yesterday, they experimented with turning off all their street lights just to see. And that's good. That not only protects the insects, that also protects the birds that are migrating right now, because they get confused by human artificial lights. And so, good on Lahti, Finland. I'm glad they sent me a press release. But on to our next story, and this is September 4th in The Guardian, and this is a story entitled Physicist M.V. Ramana on the new book on the problem with nuclear power. And it's an interesting article because it does talk about him, but the intro, it sounds like it was written by a nuclear propagandist. Basically, they just repeat the nuclear propaganda as the introduction to this. But The full title is Nuclear is Not the Solution, the Folly of Atomic Power in the Age of Climate Change. And basically MV Ramana just goes through and demolishes all the claims, the propaganda of the nuclear industry. You know, they claim it's cheaper, they claim it's clean, they claim, you know, we've been over all their false claims before, but he did a very comprehensive book. And what his focus on this book became is because, you know, the facts of it are actually known by people who like care to research it and look, you know, past the pro-nuclear trolls and things on the internet. The facts that nukes are expensive, they create the wastes, they're dangerous, they're slow, those are established by people who look at the issue dispassionately. And so what the focus of his book became is, why do governments and corporations continue to push it so hard? We only got about 100 nukes in the US and only about 400 worldwide. And those have already resulted in dozens of serious industry accidents and some absolute catastrophes like Chernobyl and Fukushima. Also, his research shows that nuclear produces fewer jobs than things like wind and solar. And he pointed out that nukes have dropped. In 1997, they were at their peak. They provided 16.7% of the world's electricity. In 2023, they only produced 9.2%. And this year, it's going to be even lower than that. Whereas wind and solar, in 97, they produced less than 1% of the world's electricity. And now they're up to, in 2023, they're up to 15%. So the thing is that about this book, and there was another recent anti-nuclear book released by a fellow named Don Brugge that looks really good. And the thing is that this is how we beat nukes the last time. This is how we beat nukes back in the 70s, is because the government and the corporations were pushing the same propaganda, you know, as they are now. But what happened is the people who actually look at this stuff and research it and find the facts of the matter started putting out books, and then people like read the books and realized that they were being conned, and so the information got passed around and amplified, and eventually it blossomed into the anti-nuclear movement, which is sort of the progenitor of the entire environmental movement in the United States, was the anti-nuclear movement. So this is how we did it. You know, they've got the megaphones, they've got the stage, but we're in the audience, and we can like poke the person next to us and say, you know, he's lying. You know, that was complete crap what they just said. And over time, the truth basically came out and overwhelmed the propaganda. So let's pray that happens again with this nuclear renaissance. Okay, but speaking of propaganda, our next story, this is by the website Electrek with a K, back on September 4th, story by the name of written by Jameson Dow, title, Ignorance of How EVs Work is Holding Back Uptake, says survey. So this was a survey done in the United Kingdom, but the anti-electric vehicle propaganda is the same over there as it is over here, because these guys all coordinate, you know, I don't know where they do it, but probably on Zoom. But anyway, they did a survey of 1,500 car drivers, and the people who were driving cars that used gas only got 2 out of 10 correct. And what they basically found was that the lies the propagandists, the oil and gas industry, are telling, people have just believed. They just believe it. So, for example, 2/3 of the people polled think that it's more expensive to own an EV than it is to own a gas vehicle. And only 14% were correct in believing that it's actually cheaper. And I just had an example of that myself. I went in, got my tires rotated. My 5-year-old brake pads are like new. So I haven't had to replace my brake pads once in 5 years. And my oil life is down to like 5% right now. But the last time I got my oil change was in January. So to only need an oil change once every 9 or 10 months, you know, that saves a lot of money.
Okay, but why does it being electric lead to your brake pads getting less use?
Because the regenerative brakes, instead of friction, instead of squeezing the brake pad, the drum, just electromagnetically take the energy away without even touching. Nothing, there's no friction, nothing touches anything. It's just
Wow.
they increase the magnetic field, and that increases the power going back into the battery.
Okay.
And so I don't even use the physical brakes hardly at all. I do almost all
Wow.
my deceleration electrically, and I
Okay.
get the energy back.
Interesting.
So yeah, and so the same with the oil, since I'm running electric much of the time, and the only time I use my gas is when I'm on a long trip where I'm not accelerating and decelerating, so my engine's just running nice and calm, and so, my gas changes every 9 or 10 months. My brake pads, I don't even know how long they're gonna last. At this rate, they might last an entire decade. But lots of repairs like that people with gas cars just have to constantly shell out. I don't have to because I have a plug-in hybrid. And so, let's see, another false thing. Half the people polled think that EVs are more likely to catch fire. And in fact, it turns out EVs are 80 times less likely to catch fire than cars that are filled with essentially, bomb
An explosive.
material. An explosive, right.
Gasoline
Right.
is explosive.
Yeah, right. That's why they use it. It's because it explodes in your little spark plug chamber there in your. But yeah, so
That
EVs
is
are
what we call internal combustion.
Yes. EVs are 80 times less likely to burn, but half the people thought they're more likely to burn. And 35% also thought that EVs put out as much CO2 as gas cars because the propaganda is that, oh, your EV is coal powered, but that just isn't true. EVs only put less than a third of the CO2 in the air, even when they charge up using coal power. So just remember that there's a whole bunch of companies that have an interest in you not switching to EV, and they're basically filling people's heads with nonsense in order to slow the transition down when we've got to accelerate it. So on from that story onto a hopeful story, a happy story. Denmark shuts its last coal plant. This is a story in a Renew Economy on September 3rd. A company called Ørsted, and the title is, "We're Making History. Ørsted shuts last coal-fired heat and power plant." The Esbjerg power station was 378 megawatts. And by shutting it, they're going to prevent 1.2 million tons of CO2 from going into the atmosphere every year. And Ørsted has committed, that power company, to a net zero generation by 2025, which is just next year, and net zero emissions by 2040. Interestingly, the Danish government had ordered them to keep it open, and the reason until August 31st. And the reason is that they have a right-wing government has taken over Denmark. They actually elected a left-leaning government, but they had a minister switch sides, which changed the majority. And as soon as they get in, these right-wingers start pumping, start doing crazy things like telling companies they have to keep using coal. And I have to wonder, why is the right so opposed to survival?
Right.
This is a question of survival, folks. We have to stop burning coal, stop putting CO2 in the air. But as soon as the government prohibition ended, literally that day, they went and shut the coal plant down. Now, there is a controversial CO2 tax on agriculture there, which is the reason that the liberal, quote unquote, liberal MP gave for switching over the conservatives. But it's like, no, we have to do everything we can to stop putting CO2 there, because it's going to kill us if we don't. So on to our next story. This one goes to British Columbia, Canada. So not only do we have to stop putting CO2 in, we have to stop cutting down the trees that are pulling the CO2 out. And Canfor is basically a big lumber company in British Columbia, and they've announced that they're closing 2 of their northern British Columbia sawmills, affecting 500 staff. They're blaming the U.S. tariffs and the U.S. slapped tariffs on the Canadian timber companies because they're selling what's called the stump fee is less than 1%. It's like 0.5% of the value of the timber they're cutting. is the quote-unquote stump fee that the federal government is charging the timber companies for cutting down their trees. But they also listed the challenge of accessing economically viable timber, which translates to they've run out of trees. Yeah. And we were covering, there was a big, huge protest in Canada at the Fairy Creek area of British Columbia because they were cutting down this old growth. Just 2 years ago, we were interviewing protesters who were on the front line trying to blockade these folks.
I remember that.
Right. And the protesters said, at the rate they're cutting these old growth trees down, they're going to run out in 3 years. And they've run out, basically. And so, it should not be a surprise to these people who are working in this timber mill when you're doing an extractive industry, when you're cutting down a finite resource, and old growth forest is a very finite resource. Eventually you run out. And so that's what's happened. And just a quick side note, they also 3 years ago signed an agreement with some of the Indian tribes there to stop protesting. And they signed an agreement where they would pay them $240,000 a year for 3 years. And they were so poor that some of the tribes took this money. But this is a very standard method of colonization where they take, they get the native tribe economy based on extraction. And then once the extraction is done, the native economy collapses. And so that's what they just did in British Columbia. Last story, as promised, a feel-good, happy story. Off to Colorado and the Rocky Mountain National Park, wolves have re-entered the park for the first time since wolves were exterminated in Colorado back in the late 1800s. Colorado passed a statewide referendum to reintroduce wolves into the statewide ecology. And so they've released 10 wolves. 9 of them are still alive. 1 apparently got eaten by a mountain lion. But they've had pups. They did the release last year. There's at least 1 reproducing pack that had produced 3 pups. And so just a story telling us that it's not hopeless, that if we make the right decisions, we can actually bring the natural world back to health.
Go forest puppies.
So let's just go ahead and do that really fast, folks. That's it. That's it for this show. Thanks so much for listening. This is Joe DeMare.
And Rebecca Wood.
We are signing off.
I don't want no oil, a spoil in my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things a-creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more 3-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun